Ohio State added yet another member to its 2026 recruiting class. I'm Stephen Means, and that's Andrew Gillis. And his name is Cam Brickle, number 537 player, number 62 defensive lineman in the country. He's the third defensive lineman in this class, a 3-star commit from IMG Academy down there in Florida. Is he from Florida, though, Andrew, or is this just a situation where he just happens to live in Florida because he goes to IMG?
He just happens to live in Florida because he goes to IMG. He's originally from Pennsylvania, moved out to California for his sophomore year. Now he's at IMG. I believe he was in Pennsylvania for his junior season. Now he's back at IMG. So he has been all over the map for his high school football career.
Okay. So cool. Cam Brickle, 6'2", 305 pounds. So he's a nose tackle, obviously, in the situation. Yeah. He joins Jamari Simeon, who committed last week as well, and Kari Wilder as defensive lineman in this class. 19 commits overall for a class that's ranked 5th in the country with this commitment. Andrew, what do we think? 3-star recruit Cam Brickle joining Ohio State's recruiting class.
Yeah, I mean, this is a solid addition. I think that there were a lot of people who were saying, we want the Carter Meadows type, the kid who just committed to Michigan. We want the Wayful kid who just committed to USC. And those complaints and those fears are, I think, valid. I think that's where Ohio State really, really needs to hit in this class is at edge. But Cam Brickle is a good football player. Like you mentioned 6'2", 305. This guy probably is a nose tackle. You watch him on film and he's physical. You can see definitely kind of like that just stout nature of he's not going to get pushed off the ball. He's not going to get driven off the ball. I think he's a good force in the middle of that defense. And then you pair him with Jamari Simeon, like you said, Kari Wilder. I mean, we've talked about him before as maybe being, a guy who starts at end, maybe comes inside. But if Kari Wilder sticks at edge, Brickle and Simeon, I think, is a fine interior tandem, especially when you have somebody out there, sitting out there like a Jameer Perez. He's the Glenville kid who is currently committed to Florida. We'll see kind of what happens here over these next couple of weeks. But to me, Brickle is a solid addition. And I think, people will probably see he's the number 537 overall player, number 62 defensive lineman. Those are per the 247 composite. And they'll probably say, Andrew, why should I be excited about this? Andrew, why should I care about this? Because I don't think he's going to be the highlight of the class, right? I don't think this is going to be, Cam Brickle's the headliner here. And that's nothing against Cam Brickle, who I think is a good football player. I just think it's going to take a little bit of time. He has had some hiccups in his high school career. I know he's kind of battled some injury, I believe. So, he's working on, kind of that development and that consistency. And I think you see that on his film. But yeah, this is a kid who, when he gets to Ohio State, I think probably in a year or two, you might be talking about him as somebody who goes, he might be in that rotation as that nose tackle because, we've mentioned it. Ohio State just doesn't really have a lot of those body types. And he is one of those body types that Ohio State could use up the middle. So, good, powerful player, nose guard at the next level. So this is your Ty Hamilton type. This is your guy that is going to be probably 320, 325 at some point. And when he plays on the nose and when he plays on the interior, you feel pretty decent about him just eating up space and eating up blockers.
So you got Jamari Simeon out of New Jersey, number 201 player, number 26 defensive lineman. You've got Kari Wilder as an edge rusher out of California, number 241 player, number 23 edge rusher. Though the way he performed at the Rivals camp last week, I would assume he might take a significant jump up in the rankings. Yeah. But still, it's not like he's going to jump from 241 to being a 5-star recruit. And now you've got Cam Brickle from Florida, but originally from Pennsylvania, number 537 player, number 62 defensive lineman in the country. That's, as June closes out right now, that's Ohio State's defensive line class, though we expect it to grow over the next couple of months here. But as June closes out and we head into July, those are the 3 guys they got in this month. Right now, as we're recording this video and as you're watching this video, if we had to put a grade on Ohio State's defensive line class so far, what would the grade be?
I'm going to say a C. I think a C is, if I'm going by memory here of when I was in high school, it's average. I think it was A, excellent, B, very good, C, average, D, below average, failing. I don't think you're at failing. I think there are some people who are, probably really upset with, defensive line recruiting right now. I think there are some people who are, really upset with just the recruiting operation in general. I mean, they're still the number 5 overall class. They've still got a couple other guys out there who are like really, really highly rated, who Ohio State can land here over these next couple of weeks, next couple of months. And I think there are some of them that I would feel pretty good about. Like I think of Braylon Womack. He's a 5-star safety. I think Ohio State's in a good spot for him. You think of 4-star quarterback Luke Fahey. There are players where you look at and say, I don't know if this class is going to stick at 5. It might be on the up and up if things continue to trend. But on the defensive line specifically, I mean, you mentioned it. You have Simeon, you have Wilder, and now you have Brickle, and that's fine. But I'm not going to go any more than fine. I think it's perfectly okay. I'm just gonna keep finding ways to say that. I think it's one of those things where Ohio State could really use an impact edge rusher in this class. You look at maybe what is leaving the program, where you're going to need depth moving forward. I mean, you think about all the guys, Steven, that are older players on this roster: Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, Bo Atkinson, CJ Hicks. Like all these guys are not going to be around for the majority, if at all, for the linemen that we're talking about for their careers. So you need to increase your defensive end depth. And, you have Epi Satanale, who just enrolled. You have Zion Grady. Those are 2 freshmen. But outside of that, you start to wonder kind of where the punch comes from this unit. So I think this is a fine unit. I like Simeon and Wilder and Brickle as football players. I think Wilder's upside is very, very interesting to me. He's got incredibly long arms. He's a good pass rusher. You really see him use that in his pass rush arsenal and in his moves. Those things are things that I think fans can be excited about. But you also want Ohio State to land, if you're a fan, you want them to land that, okay, we have that Carter Meadows type, right? That top 75 kid. Okay, we land that Luke Wafel kid, who is a top 60, I believe, at the time when he committed, that top 60 type. Those are the kind of guys that you are looking to land if you're Ohio State. Ohio State got one last year. They had Zion Grady. That was obviously a very, very nice ad. You pull him out of the South. That's impressive. But they don't have that type of guy. And when you look at the rest of the roster, receiver, hilarious. Safety, hilarious. Offensive line has done very well. You have 2 top 120, 2 top 130 guys on the offensive line. You got a top 200 guy at running back. You've got 2 top 200 guys at corner. And that's after landing Devin Sanchez last cycle. Like everything else has kind of been set. Linebacker, you have Sincere Johnson, a top 100 kid. And that's after landing a great class last year with Riley Pettijohn and TJ Alford and Eli Lee. And it just kind of feels like defensive line has started to become the problem area for Ohio State recruiting. So I guess you're in a good place if I'm saying the problem area is a C, but I don't see that high level, whoa punch that I think a lot of Ohio State fans are looking for. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration, a lot of the angst comes from, is not that you are down on the 3 guys that they have right now as football players, but you are just asking, where is this game-changing, elite, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, All-American, first-round pick level guy? And it's going to take some development to get those guys that they currently have to that level.
Well, Larry Johnson just did it. Ty Hamilton was a draft pick, and Tyleik Williams. In that 2021 recruiting class, Tyleik Williams was the only one who wasn't a top 60 recruit. And that's the one who ended up being a first-round draft pick. So from the development standpoint, that's capable. Here's the deal. Top 60 recruits cost money. And this comes back to, I think, the question that every program has to continue to ask itself, but also the fan bases have to continue to ask themselves what side of the fence you want to sit on. You want to pay that money now, you want to pay that money when in the portal. And it's very clear, the way that Ohio State has conducted themselves in this NIL era, that they're not going to pay up front for true freshmen who may or may not play in year 1 or year 2. Now, skill positions and defensive linemen, maybe it's a little bit different, right? Jock and JT played in year 1. Zach Harrison played in year 1. We saw Education form a role in year 1. Maybe Zion Grady can do the same this year. But the real thing of it, they cost money. And you have to decide whether or not that player is worth the money or not. And right now, it doesn't seem like Ohio State's willing to take that approach. They're willing to play by the rules, the new rules that are being enforced as of Tuesday fully in this new era of revenue share and everything else that goes with it. But also, why use that money now when you could maybe use that money on a portal player later on down the road there? It worked in 2024. They went all in with retaining the stars on its roster, but also using the portal to maybe plug some holes. And they won a national championship. So you can't really argue with it, even if you're maybe frustrated by it. But I also understand the concept of everybody else is speeding. Why are you going the speed limit? And it's a weird time. It was kind of like this with the 2023 recruiting class, too, where it felt like Ohio State was abiding by rules that we're not really sure are going to be enforced yet. But as a result, right now, Ohio State's got 3 defensive line commits, a quality start to the class, but it is still maybe missing that fireworks, boom, no pun intended, for the defensive line. And maybe over the next 6 months, they can find that guy through the recruiting process. 19 commits for Ohio State. Go ahead.
I just want to add real quick. I think the way that Ohio State fans should think about this recruiting class is it's like a baseball team. You've got a bunch of, I think, number 2 and number 3 starters in your rotation right now, and you don't have that number 1 ace, right? Everybody wants that ace. If you have that ace, everybody slides down into form. If Kari Wilder is your second defensive end in this class, that's a really good defensive end class. You know, if you look at the 2 defensive tackles you have, if they're 2 and 3, this is a really good defensive tackle class. So I think that is the easiest thing, the way to describe it. It's just, if you can get that guy at the top, all of a sudden the view of this whole thing changes. The view that you were looking at Kari Wilder changes. The view of Damari Simeon and Cameron Brickle changes because you are maybe bumping them down into different slots that they might not be in right now.
Sure. And that player costs money.
Sure.
That's the point here. That player costs money. And maybe they want to pay it. Maybe they don't want to play it. 614-350-3315. Get the text. It's a 2-week free trial. $3.99 after that. Big Ten Media Days is right around the corner. Recruiting really never sleeps, so that's never around the corner. That's always just right there in your face. But the season is right there around the corner as Ohio State enters the next era of Ryan Day as its head coach with a new quarterback, new stars on both sides of the ball. 614-350-3315. Ohio State up to 19 commits, and it's top 5 ranked 2026 recruiting class, with the latest of which being Cameron Brickle, a 3-star recruit originally from Pennsylvania, who goes to IMG Academy down there in Florida. He's Andrew. I'm Steven. See you later.